Music, radio, podcasts.
5 Live Boxing.
So welcome to day 4 in Jeddah. Big fight week on Saturday. It's Oleksandr Usyk against Anthony Joshua. The rage on the Red Sea, they call it. Now, Thursday in fight week's an odd day. Generally, we try and have a day off, but I'm going to tell you a secret. We couldn't hire a boat. It's too hot. We couldn't get a boat out in the Red Sea and have a relaxing day. So instead, Richie Woodhall and I decided to watch the fight from last September. Yes, that night when Usyk beat AJ. I'm Steve Bunce, and this is 5 Live Boxing. So, Richie, on account of not being able to get a boat, and on account of being in a very hot place, and on account of being professionals, you and I sat down and we watched the fight. Now, before we talk about the fight, I've got to ask you, going back to your World Championship days, or going back to your major title days, where were you? What did you do on the Thursday, the odd day? So it's before the weigh-in, it's 2 days before the fight. What did you do on your Thursdays?
What did I do? I basically did a little bit of training. So I would have done some pad work with my dad, probably 4, 5, maybe 6 rounds of pads. How many I wanted, but it would have been no more than 5 or 6 rounds. And they're not really rounds where you're testing your fitness. They're just
ticking over
and reaction rounds. Yeah. So my dad showing me shots where I've got to hit, and just basically for speed and reactions, just staying nice and relaxed. If I was tight on the weight, a little bit of skipping, but not much. Few sit-ups and lots of flexibility work.
Yeah, so I would classify that as sensible stuff. Let me ask you. I'm going to read you 3 things that Oleksandr Usyk has done either this week or the week before the fight in London last
week
year.
Before the fight or the week of the fight?
No, the week of the fight. The week before the fight. So the days before a fight, 2 or 3 days before the fight. Now, I'm going to read you these 3 things, okay? And you are going to tell me whether they're all true or all lies or possibly true, okay? Here's number 1. And Aegis Klimas, his long-time advisor, sort of co-promoter, basically consultant. He told me these yesterday. Okay, here's one, okay? I have never seen a man, said Aegis, cycle 100 kilometers in 45-degree heat. Now, he only got here 2 or 3 days ago, so that means he's done that this week. Okay, here's the second one, okay? And this apparently happened in London before the last fight, before the press conference in London, so probably the Wednesday or the Tuesday. So I'm only talking 4 days before a fight. Usyk swam 10 kilometers. It took him 5 hours in a pool.
The week of the fight?
4 days before a fight. Listen to me, would you, Richie?
What?
Listen, I'm telling you, and don't say if it's true or false just yet.
Oh, I was about to say
you
something.
hold yourself. You control yourself. And then the other one was, I've never seen a man hold his breath underwater for 4 minutes and 40 seconds until he nearly passed out. And when I asked him, said Aegis, when I asked Oleksandr, why did you do that? And he said, my trainer was there. If I passed out, he would save me. So I put it to you, Richie Woodhall. Are those 3 things true or false?
I would say the first one of being on the bike. If that's the week of a fight, Steve, I would say that's false. But obviously in his training program, that's obviously that I would say that's true if it's not in the week of a fight.
Sure.
But if you're asking me if it's the week of a fight, that's not going to happen the week of a fight.
What about the week of a fight, a 10-kilometre swim that takes 5 hours?
That's not going to happen either. Not the week of a fight, because scientifically as well, the body's got to recover from that sort of workload, which would take probably, who knows, probably 2 or 3 days to fully recover from that. And that's the fight. And then you're on the fight. So I'm not saying he hasn't done that. And I'm not saying that wouldn't be done in his training program, but not the week of a fight. He's probably given us examples of what he's done in his training, making him out to be some kind of a Superman, which, by the way he boxes, he is like Superman, Oleksandr Usyk. But as regards to the week of a fight, that's the question you're asking me. I'd say they're false, but in the training program itself, I'd say they're true.
And what about the 4 minutes, 40 seconds underwater until he nearly passes out and then he's going to be yanked out of there by his coach? What say you, Richie Woodhall?
he wants to audition for the next Man from Atlantis film, I think, because that's what they'll probably need. That's incredible.
Well, let me tell you something, Richie.
I'll tell you what, that for 4 minutes odd, I've never tried that.
Richie,
amazing.
Could I just say, if you're listening, don't try any of these things at home.
At home,
Do
yeah.
not cycle for 100 kilometers in 45 degrees. Do not try and swim 10 kilometers for 5 hours if you've got a major sports event coming up on Saturday. And do not hold your breath for underwater unless you're trained at doing that and you've got medical people standing by, because 4 minutes 40 is going some. I spoke to Aegis and I looked him in the eyes and I've known Aegis and I said, Aegis, is it true? He said, Steve, I tell you, it is all true.
Wow.
All true. The man is,
incredible.
as they called him, a cyborg. They said he went to hell and back.
Whether he's bending the truth, Steve, like I say,
Like
whether they're examples of his training program, then yes, I would say they're true, but not the week of a fight. I still don't get it. Even if he told me, if he looked me straight in the face and said to me, yes, it's definitely true, I'd still have to question it. The week of a fight, anyway.
The thing is with Oleksandr Usyk, who will be defending his 3 titles against Joshua on Saturday here in Jeddah. The thing is with Usyk is you do know he does odd things. Yeah. You've seen all the... We weren't quite sure, but now we know it's traditional Cossack. He's very proud of his Cossack Ukrainian roots. We've seen him dancing, and some of those dance routines, they're 10, 12 minutes long. Yeah. And they're draining for a big man, and they're really vigorous. People sort of poked fun at them at first and thought they were just a sort of gimmick. But no, when you watch them again, you think, that's a workout and a half he's putting in there.
Yeah.
He is weird in his methods.
He is a special athlete, isn't he? And I remember listening to Vladimir Klitschko, who obviously is Ukrainian, and one of his training routines that he used to go into the gym and he would shadow box for 36 minutes in a ring where the canvas was...
Padded canvas.
Padded canvas, Steve. Which
like
is
marshmallow.
Absolutely. So it's so draining on the legs, and he used to shadow box before he started training for 36 minutes, 12 rounds.
Manny Stewart told us that about.
I mean, up on his toes, shadow boxing. I mean, that is just unbelievable. So yes, these Ukrainian fighters, very special. They do things differently, but it works.
And of course, with the canvas, we now know that was another one. That was one of the Klitschko's tricks. Legal trick is that they weighted the fight sometimes in their favour, because they promoted all those fights in Germany and Switzerland whenever they fought and defended their titles, the two of them, so many times, Vitaly and Vladimir, over such a long period. They were dominant, they were giants, they were Goliaths. One of the things they did is they had very padded canvas, and lots of Americans complained about that, but they never did anything about it. But you remember, we were there. Dusseldorf, you know what I'm going to say? Yeah. Tyson Fury.
Big Tyson.
Vladimir in November, of 2015. Seems so long ago, nearly 7 years ago. And you remember rightly that Peter Fury, who was his uncle and trainer at the time, Gypsy John, his father, they were at the venue.
They knew the score,
on the day, and they discovered the canvas, and they ripped it open. Pulled up the canvas, looked at the foam underneath. The foam was so padded, they had a big lump of it. They showed me in a lift, and we broke the story on 5 Live, and they demanded that the Klitschko's change the canvas, because he was used to fighting on that, like marshmallow, basically. A big soft bed.
Which drains the legs.
Yeah. Brilliant. So that was a brilliant piece. Okay, Richie, we sat down earlier on to watch this fight. Now, I haven't watched it since the night. I was there. Let me just build this fight for you, because there's a couple of things we need to know. The fight at Tottenham Hotspur's Stadium last on the 25th of September, 2021. Now, it was AJ's 5th stadium fight. And in the previous 4 and up to that fight, when 67,000 people paid to fill that place, and it was a cauldron, a total of 370,000 people had watched him in those 5 stadium fights. That's not a bad stat. Usyk was unbeaten as a professional in 18 fights, and it was only his 3rd fight at heavyweight. AJ was 31, a few years younger, and he had just the one loss, the one to Ruiz, which he avenged here. And on the night itself, Rich, there was a carnival, the day and night. There was a carnival in Tottenham. The whole high street was full. People were just flooding from the tube stations and from the overground stations to fill that brand new stadium. It had only been open a few months. And it was an electric night. And Michael Buffer takes the mic and he starts his introductions, and Usyk gets to the ring and there's fireworks. Then AJ comes in. And it was only watching it here again today, because on the night I'm commentating, I'm talking, I'm having a bit of a laugh, I'm trying to set the scene. It was an extraordinary long walk by AJ. And also, he seemed completely distracted.
Yes, he did. I just found it a little bit odd in that he seemed to be a little bit distracted. He seemed to be tapping everyone's hand going in.
Kept recognising people going over and kissing them.
He even kissed a lady, on the way in. He was smiling too much for me. And some people might say, well, he's relaxed, and if he'd have put in a good performance, knocked him out, then he's handled the nerves okay. But that wasn't the case, was it? And it just, looking at it now, it just looked a little bit odd. Him smiling the way he did, tapping everyone's hands, recognising someone in the crowd, an old lady that he gave a little kiss to, and then he goes to the ring. It was just a little bit odd. And then in the corner, we actually watched as Michael Buffer is announcing Oleksandr Usyk and Joshua. He's talking to a security guard
Clifton
who we
Mitchell,
know,
a good
Clifton
one,
Mitchell,
who fought for the British title, who trains fighters. So he's a good guy. He's a boxing guy,
and he's having a conversation.
It's an intense conversation.
Yeah,
it's not just 2 seconds.
It's not like, how you doing, mate?
Not for 10 seconds. He was talking to him for a good minute or so. Now, what was interesting, on the night, I couldn't see that from our ringside position because I wasn't looking. He was in the ring. I was trying to look at different things. But what we do know is that in the last 48 hours out here in Saudi Arabia, Eddie Hearn has said that he was actually talking to Clifton about tactics for the fight. Now, there's nothing wrong with asking Clifton Mitchell about the fight if it's 6 weeks before, a week before, or even 6 hours before. But not when you're standing in the ring and Buffer's introducing you and 67,000 people are looking at you, and then you're looking eye to eye with Clifton Mitchell. And that's weird.
Well, Steve, what it does suggest is he's very insecure in his mind of how he's going to fight. Because I think how he's going to box him. If he's asking Clifton Mitchell, tactics, then a bizarre situation. So you put that together with the ring walk, the smiling, this, that. He's probably a bit unsure. And now we know from what's been revealed this week that he was asking about tactics. That's not normal.
It's not normal.
That's not normal.
The one thing you did say, Rich, after about 2 minutes of the ring walk and the brilliant fireworks, and the production was unbelievable, and they had a high camera up there, and it was just beautiful. It looked incredible. One thing you said was it'll be different on Saturday night. And it has to. It will be, obviously.
It's got to be different. And
the ring walk I'm talking about.
The ring walk, And I think the signs for me were in the press conference that we attended, in that there was no small Manti and Joshua in that press conference. What I seen, I was watching him intently, Steve, and he was so stone-faced and just answered the questions and this, that. He's serious because he knows this is, it's a situation here that he's got to win. He's got to win this fight, so he's got to be serious about it. He's got to change, and I think it will be different. It's got to be different.
Okay, so the ring starts to empty. And it's, Buffer is about the last man to get out of the men that have got to get out. Then there's just Mike Oleksandr, the referee. Then there's just Oleksandr Usyk. Then there's just Anthony Joshua. And there's a sense of anticipation. And you and I have been at some big fights, Rich. Vladimir Klitschko and Joshua. Tyson Fury in Dusseldorf, 50,000 people under that roof in that stadium against Vladimir Klitschko. Some big fights, and I can assure you, hand on heart, and you know me, I'm telling you, there was a sense in there. It was a collective sense of we're all in this together. And I'm not being an half the time. I scribbled that on my notes at the time. And then the bell sounds. And, well, I calculate it was about 18, 19 seconds before Usyk slips his shoulder, sends Joshua the wrong way with his eyes, and lands a big left on the cheek.
Big left, that's one of his favourite moves. Just slipping to the right, as a southpaw, slipping to the right, anticipating the jab that's going to come. If it comes, he's going to slip it anyway. If it doesn't, well, I'm going to slip and just throw the left hand to the middle, and he caught Josh. And I think it was very evident from the first minute that the movement of Usyk. Then I think Anthony Joshua he struggled right from round one, and he wasn't sort of prepared for that mentally, Steve. Never mind physically, he wasn't prepared for that mentally. And obviously, you know, I was involved up in Sheffield, and I've seen a few of the camps, and I've seen the sparring and that. It was difficult to replicate a moving southpaw that Usyk is. You know, he had some good southpaws there.
He's not just a southpaw.
He's not just a southpaw. Let's get it right.
Explain that, Rich. Explain, because not everybody listening to Five Live or listening to the Boxing Pod will absolutely understand. Explain what you mean by he's not just a normal southpaw. Explain it like you're explaining it to somebody that really doesn't know.
He's not. Well, what I mean by not just a normal southpaw. He's a southpaw that I always say about his movement. He doesn't move in. He moves in and out, but if you look, he doesn't move in straight lines. He will punch, then move off to the side. And for the whole contest, and especially in the first round, how he started, he's picking and poking with his jab on the outside. He's a counter-puncher, Steve, but going forward. He's a forward counter-puncher, because a lot of people think of counter-punching on the back foot.
And that's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, on the back foot, the opponent
guy
leads,
misses,
you make
counter.
him miss, you counter. But he's a counter-puncher on the front foot. So he's actually going forward. He's anticipating the shots coming at him. They throw the shot, he slips, he punches.
So he's got very fast reactions, and we saw a bit of that at the open workout. You remember what he did at the open workout? And let me just remind you, if you're listening to this, put your right arm out, and on the back of your hand, put 5 coins. Okay? 5 coins, even coins, whatever they be, 50p. Now stand up and flick your hand up in the air so that the 5 coins separate. And then, with that same right hand, pick all 5 of them out of the air. He did that.
That's incredible.
He did that. It's filmed. You can go and find it. I talked about this on the pod when we did the pod from the arenas the day before you came in. And then he did it again just to show he wasn't joking. And then he did it again and dropped a couple. And then he did it again and landed all of them. I think he dropped them intentionally to build the tension. So that's what he did. On the back of his right hand, there's 5 coins. He flicks them up in the air, and it's almost like in slow motion. He grabs them.
Well, I'm not saying I'm tight with my money, Steve, but I've tried that, and all the 5 coins, they hit the back of my neck before they hit the floor.
Well, so basically, when he's getting close enough to Joshua, and he can counter, as you say, from the front foot, that's because he can pick shots just like he can pick out those coins. Yeah. Let's move
and
it
Steve, on. Let's talk as well. When we talk about like a southpaw that we spoke about earlier, about most southpaws like to sit back, counter-punching on the back foot. So he's a bit different. He can do that, Usyk. He's a good all-rounder, but he counter-punches on the front foot. But it's his movement. Why he's different to other southpaws, his movement is always circular around his opponent. So he's not conceding ground.
And always moving.
Always moving. Never gets caught on the ropes, where he could be vulnerable, because your feet will always come square on the ropes. He never gets backed up on the ropes. So it's the movement which is different. It's around the opponent. He's not conceding ground, although he's moving. Very clever.
So the first 4 or 5 rounds, basically, he's just a little bit too fast for AJ. AJ's, he's not losing the rounds massively, but he's losing the rounds. But AJ has what I consider a half decent. I think it's about the 6th or the 7th when AJ has
6th round, his best round at that point.
Best round up until that point, and that's because he gets a little bit closer.
Yes.
When what we do. This here is not about the tactics, about how he wins. It's about analysing what went wrong in that fight. I want to take you to what I think is a really crucial round.
Go on.
I want to take you to round 8.
Yeah.
Because in this round, I think AJ not necessarily cracks Usyk, but he suddenly starts to find a way to hurt him, pushes him back a little bit for the first time.
Steve, not only did I thought Josh have a good round, there were signs in that round where he could have took the ball by the horns and really got to grips with the fight. Basically, I thought Josh was behind anyway up to that point.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But from there, that was the point where he could have started to turn the table.
That's when he starts to become the big man. That's when he could have forced himself.
Exactly. There was just signs there saying, right, Josh, now you're finding... It took you to round 8, but now you're finding a way how to win this fight.
Yes.
Let's press on now, mate. This is what you've got to do. There were good signs in that round, Steve.
Yeah.
But the next round, he failed to take the initiative.
Yeah, he did not only fail to take the initiative, but then suddenly, having got through the 9th, there's not a lot in the 9th as such. the 10th and the 11th, I think Usyk wins those rounds. And then in the 12th, Usyk has what can only be described as a mighty round. And now it's interesting because between 11 and 12, Ross Amber, you know very well, who's working on a bad cut that Usyk's got on the right-hand side of his face, just above his eye, just on the line of his nose. And Ross Amber's been working on that for a couple of rounds. AJ's also got a badly swollen right eye and blood coming from both his mouth and his nose. This is a tough fight without it being a brutal brawl. I think that's fair comment. But Ross Amber, you picked up on it. At the end of the 11th round, going to the 12th.
He's smiling.
Ross Amber's smiling. They know.
Ross Amber is smiling in the corner. It's a lovely, calm corner. The instructions, obviously, in Ukrainian, and they don't seem to be not one bit of panic in there. Very professional. But yes, Russ Amber, who I know very well, great cutsman, and he bandages his hands for Lomachenko and all the great fighters. Well, you can see Russ actually smiling, and the way he's just attending to the cut. And it's as if he knows, and the whole corner.
Their tactics had worked.
Yeah, the confidence in the corner, which I have to say, during the contest, we rarely go to the Usyk corner. But in this round, we did. And he was smiling, Steve, as if they knew that they only had to get through this next round. And the 12th round, it was a massive round for Usyk.
But Usyk doesn't need to take a risk in that round. So why does he take a risk, Rich?
Well, it's incredible.
Why does he take a risk? Because at that point, he's 3 or 4 rounds up, in theory. Why does he take a risk?
He's probably thinking, I want to put the icing on the cake here, because he even goes for what we thought was a stoppage.
In the last 25 seconds, AJ is hurt and troubled.
Yeah, hurt and troubled. And again, it was a great performance from Usyk in that round. The movement again was lovely. His timing, his in and out work, it was just very, very good indeed. And we think that now, looking at it, we've just seen it back, he thinks, right, I'm going to go for this and I'm going to try and stop him, which would have been the icing on the cake.
And AJ, this is one thing that people forget. We watched the last 20 seconds back several times, and I'll explain why in a second. But AJ is still throwing punches.
Yeah, of course he is.
His bum's on about the second rope. Yeah. He's hurt. He's smeared with blood. Yeah. He's in trouble. There's 15 seconds left. There's 10 seconds left. There's 5 seconds left. And he is still throwing punches. Now, the reason why we played it back is there's a glorious little myth attached that the bell sounded 6 seconds early. Just to explain, if you ever watch this on TV, at 10 seconds, the clock vanishes from the TV and a gong sounds, and it's the final 10 seconds. So what we did here, with the help of Paddy with a calculator, that's the producer, who failed to organise a boat.
I didn't have a calculator. I had a stopwatch.
Okay, he had a stopwatch. It turns out Paddy had a stopwatch. But he failed to organise a boat on the Red Sea. Yeah. But that's okay, we'll let him on. So he had a stopwatch. So we played it back and back, and we've worked out that it's between half a second and just over 1 second early, the bell rings. So it does not ring 6 seconds early. Let's get that right. No. At the end of the fight, AJ looks exhausted. Usyk looks elated, and also with that little look gleaming in his eyes. The 3 judges deliver their scorecards. All 3 are in favour of Usyk by a margin of 5 rounds, 4 rounds, which is what I had, and I was maybe kind to AJ on a round, and 2 rounds. There is one judge who scores it 2 rounds. Now, watching it back, I thought it was a much better fight than I thought on the night. On the night, I thought that AJ was slow, which he was, and predictable, which he was. But I didn't quite realise that he had tried things. They just hadn't worked. Because Usyk was, first 6 rounds, he was nearly flawless, Rich. Is that a fair comment?
He was nearly flawless. And again, his all-round general boxing ability. Those first 3 or 4 rounds, when I watched it again, I think Usyk is expecting more from Josh. I thought,
without a doubt,
he's expecting more from Josh.
They can't believe their luck.
He can't believe it, Steve. You've got it in one. And he just got into his rhythm, Usyk did, and he was allowed to get into that rhythm. And Josh just, for me, and again, I'll revert back to what Tony Bellew says, you're so concentrating on the movement of Usyk. So not only is it a draining fight physically, but it's a draining fight mentally. Yeah. And Tony Bellew always said that about when he fought him. He said, it tired me so much mentally. Yeah. And I think, again, Josh fell into that trap, and where he failed as well, Steve, was very, very flat feet, very, very slow feet. But, we can say this now, but, we've got to give credit to Usyk's performance. The movement, he was exceptional, but I think he expected more from Josh. We all did, and it just wasn't to be.
Richie, that's the fight. That's the atmosphere. That's the glory of the night. But I've got to bring up one of the sort of big stories that came out of the fight, and it's to do with the mixed messages that Joshua insisted he was receiving from the corner. Now, there are 3 men in the corner. One of them is Robert McCracken. And I think it's safe to say that it's not Robert McCracken's voice we can hear throughout this fight. There are people in his corner who are telling him, you're boxing beautifully. That's brilliant. Great combinations, AJ. He doesn't throw a combination till round 10.
Mixed messages indeed. Again, I listened to what Rob says in the corner. His instructions were good about doubling up the jab, using the right hand and press on. There's nothing wrong in that. I thought what Rob was saying was okay. So the mixed messages came not from the corner during the break, the 1 minute interval. We're talking about the messages that were coming from the corner during the fight itself. Certainly wasn't from Rob McCracken. No. It was from people shouting and saying, you're doing well, great feet, great this, great that. And it clearly wasn't great. Yeah. And if AJ is listening to that, then he's thinking, well, I'm 4 rounds up here when he's 4 rounds behind. Yeah. There were totally wrong messages. I don't know who was saying these things, but it was certainly from the corner, and it wasn't good because listen, if a fighter is relying on the corner for messages, then he's getting the wrong message there. He was certainly getting the right message from McCracken. I'm not just saying that because I know Rob McCracken, but what he was saying I thought was constructive and it was spot on. But in the fight itself, people shouting at him, clearly giving him instructions that were totally wrong.
Not what we were watching.
Yeah, it's like not the fight I was watching.
It's like a different soundtrack. Richie, once again, sorry for not getting you on a boat on the Red Sea. It was beautiful watching that fight back. 67,000 people in that stadium, the whole of Tottenham, the whole of North London, the whole of the nation gripped. AJ getting it wrong, Usyk getting it right. We're getting closer and closer to see what happens when the bell sounds here on Saturday night in Jeddah.
Let's get ready to rumble!
5 Live Boxing.